Welcome to the Morningside School of Music YouTube channel. Today we're going to be talking about piano chords on the keyboard. I'm going to take you through some very common chords and how they're played. So what we're going to start off with is the C major scale, because all the chords that we're going to build today are going to come from the C major scale. We're going to use that as our foundation, as our basis. So if we look here, we can see that we have C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. That's a C major scale, and the numbers we're going to assign to that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 and 8. Number 8 being the octave, the same as the first note, which is also C. And at the bottom of the screen you can see the C major scale on the piano. So moving on, we're going to look at our first chord, which is the most common type of chord, it's a major chord. And the notes in a C major chord are C, E and G. So we're going to use numbers 1, 3 and 5 from the C major scale. You can see at the bottom we still have our C major scale, it's numbers 1, 3 and 5. So we're going to put that over on the right hand side of the screen. 1, 3, 5. Now the numbers are the degrees of the scale. So the first, the third and the fifth degree of the major scale. Moving on, we have our next most common chord, which is a minor chord. And from the scale we're going to flatten our third note. We're going to make the E turn into an E flat by flattening it, moving it down one semitone. So the notes in a C minor chord are C, E flat and G, and you can see at the bottom how to play that on the piano. The first, the flattened third and the fifth note of the C major scale. Moving on, we have a seventh chord. Now seventh chords are used a lot in blues music, and we have 3 notes that should be there and 1 note that isn't in the scale. That's our flat 7, so that gives us a bit of tension, which is quite a nice sound when we're using in blues music. We have, for example, a C7, an F7 and a G7. That's called the 1-4-5 progression, a blues progression. And if we look on the treble clef, we can see we've got a C, an E, a G and a B flat, which is the flattened note. And at the bottom it shows you how to play it. Moving on to the next chord, we have a major 7. So this is similar to the first 7th, but this time we're not going to flatten our 7. It's not a dominant 7. When we flatten our 7, we refer to that as a dominant 7. You'll hear some people calling it that. So this is 4 notes that should be in the major scale. It's very dreamy, warm. It's used in love music, ballads, things like that. Because we've got 4 notes from the major scale, it's a very warm sound. C, E, G and B. Moving on to our next chord. If we've got a major 7, we've got to have a minor 7. So we have a flattened 3 and a flattened 7. So the notes in the C minor 7 chord are C, E flat, G and B flat. And minor 7 is abbreviated, usually MIN 7, or you can sometimes just have a small M and a 7. And moving on, the next chord we have in our progression is sus2, which means suspended second. That's where we take our 3 off and we replace it with 2. This is a good filler chord. So for example, if you're playing a C major chord for, let's say, I don't know, let's say 4 beats, and you want, it's getting a bit boring just playing C, you can put in a C sus2, gives it a bit of variation. That would be changing it from a C chord, which is C, E, G, to a C sus2, which is C, D, G. And at the bottom of the screen you can see how to play a C sus2 chord, a C suspended second. Moving on, if we've got a sus2, we also have a sus4, and that's the same idea. We take our 3 out, we replace it with the 4. We have C, F and G in this chord, that's 1, 4, 5. Moving on, we have an augmented chord, abbreviated AUG, not to be confused with the month of August, of course. We have C, E and G sharp. So we're sharpening our 5th. Now that gives it a very distinctive sound. You'll hear it in horror music, for example. It's a very bright sound, very kind of off-putting sound. If you try it, you'll hear it. So that's C, E, G sharp, which is our sharpened 5th. Moving on, we have a diminished chord, abbreviated DIM. and the notes in a diminished chord are 1, flat 3, flat 5, and in this progression you can see that we have C, E flat, G flat, and that is a diminished chord. There are different types of diminished chords. They're fuller diminished chords. This is just what we call a diminished triad, so it's just the first three notes of a full diminished chord. Moving on, we have an add 9 chord. Now this is where it gets a bit interesting, because as we said at the start, a major scale takes us up 8 notes. We go from C up to C, which is an octave. That's 8 notes. So where does the 9 come into it? Well, what we have to do is we go up 1 extra note, which takes us up to the 9th note, which is D up an octave. And for the add 9, we have C, E, G and D. Now what you can do is we can do a thing called an inversion, where you would take that high D, which is a bit of a stretch to get up there with your pinky if you're playing it on the piano, and you can put it in between the first C and E, so you have C, D, E, G. You can do that. If you play the D up an octave, it gives you a much brighter sound because you've got that high D going in there. Now on to the last chord. If we've got an add 9, we can put in a minor add 9, which is a minor chord with an added 9th on top. So the minor chord would be 1, flat 3, 5, and our 9 at the top gives us our D. So C, E flat, G and D. Bit of a stretch. Again, you can take that high D and you can put it down in between the C and E flat, which makes it much more manageable. So that's our piano chords for today. If you have any questions, please put them below in the YouTube video and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And I hope that you subscribe, because I'm going to be making a lot more videos to put on YouTube, and I'm going to do a guitar version of this video so that you can see the guitar chords. Thank you very much for watching, and you've been watching the Morningside School of Music YouTube channel.